It is a good time to be alive, my friends. We are here with my first mock draft of the 2026 NFL season. I've been busy grinding the tape, getting caught up on first round draft prospects, and I'm finally in a position here where I can make this video and not feel like I'm kind of having to talk out of my butt. I have some opinions on these prospects that I'm very excited to get into today and to share this first mock draft. Just a few notes on what to expect from this mock draft. Number one, this is, as I like to do on this channel, a what I would do mock draft, truly placing myself in the GM chair of all 32 teams, trying to make the best decision for each team at each spot based on my own analysis and opinions on these players. Additionally, I do have a big blockbuster trade that I'll be working into this mock draft. Really out the gate here, I am doing the Max Crosby to the Bears trade, something I've been talking about since December. I've seen some of the big media outlets really follow the idea that that seems like a really rational move to be made. It would be in this scenario, and I think realistically, that 25th pick in the draft, a third-round pick next year, DJ Moore going to the Raiders, which will bake into some of our Raiders decisions, and then in return, the Bears get Max Crosby, making that big push for an edge rusher that can hopefully put them over the edge. He said it. He said it. Get them to be, a better chance at winning the Super Bowl next year. Get that defense really cooking. I really like how Max Crosby fits with the Bears. And for the Raiders, I mean, it's Max Crosby doesn't seem like he really wants to be here. Maybe they can work that out. But I really like that trade idea. I thought it was fitting to work that into my first mock draft because it's a take I've had for months at this point that has become a more popular idea. Bears fans, I won't do this for you every mock draft. You will see more opportunities to see me dive into that 25th pick that they do have. Just a couple names so you don't feel completely left out of this thing. I think Zion Young out of Missouri, Caleb Banks out of Florida would be some good D-line targets there. But, I really was looking at that like, am I drafting a first round rookie like that? Or would I rather largely take that pick and convert it into Max Crosby? I think it's a pretty easy decision when you look at it that way. So there's the analysis on the trade to expect here today. And then the last note here, I always try to be transparent with you guys on kind of what my ratings are and where I'm at in the process. I haven't dove deep into the tackle group or the secondary yet. So when I'm placing some of these offensive linemen and the secondary players, with the exception of Caleb Downs, who I have watched, I'm going much more off of kind of my preliminary research, more consensus rankings on those guys. So, keep an eye out for any opinions I say on those position groups to be a little bit more fluid over the coming weeks as we lead up to the next mock draft. But beyond that, definitely felt comfortable to get into this thing here today. So let's go ahead and begin with the number one overall pick. And this is a bit of a boring year for the first overall pick, and that it's February and the Raiders have all but told us that it's going to be Fernando Mendoza. So that's going to be the pick here at number one. And the beauty of analyzing this pick is I did do a full 30-minute film analysis on Fernando Mendoza, diving into his strengths and weaknesses. So if you're a Raiders fan and you know what you're getting with this number one pick and you want to get fully ready for it, I encourage you to check that video out. I will still talk a little bit about Mendoza here. I think he's a very good quarterback prospect. I think he's just on the cusp of like good enough to consider with the number one pick, if that makes sense, where you do reach a point as an organization where you can really only play the hand you're dealt, if that makes sense. And that's obviously what the Raiders plan to do here by drafting the number one quarterback in this draft. Mendoza did not get a grade that would suggest to me he would be the number one quarterback in most QB drafts. I think you look at his physical traits, they're good. He's got a strong arm. He can pick up first downs with his legs, but he's not a twitchy athlete. He doesn't have this ridiculous arm. It's more than good enough. But from a traits perspective, they're good traits. They're not amazing traits. And you look at that Indiana offense as well, and I do think there's relevant notes about the fact that most of his throws were outside the hashes. He didn't attack the middle of the field so much. It was a lot of first read throws. It was a pretty comfortable infrastructure. Not to say he can't make full field progressions or attack the middle of the field and play in a less comfortable infrastructure. But there's some questions that need answered there. So I don't think Mendoza is like bust proof or anything like that. I also don't think it's super likely that he becomes this superhuman quarterback that year in, year out, you're looking at him as a guy that can go toe-to-toe with Mahomes and Herbert in this division and all the other more, true superstar elite QBs in the league. But could he be close to like what Bo Nix has been for the Broncos? I think there's some Dak Prescott in there, Kirk Cousins, Brock Purdy, that kind of range of QBs. Yeah, and like I said, if this is the hand you're dealt and you want to move forward with this guy and you got a guy in Clint Kubiak coming in as your offensive coach and you think it's a really good fit to kind of get these two guys hitting the road together on their venture here in Las Vegas, sure. And like I said, we added a really nice playmaker through that trade, adding DJ Moore into the mix here. So he does have maybe a little bit more of a comfortable infrastructure than before that trade. He's got Moore, Brock Bowers, Ashton Jinty. So some building blocks around Mendoza there. But let's get to the number 2 pick with the New York Jets. And I won't go on this monologue every time we do this Jets pick, but because it's our first mock draft, my first thought on this Jets pick here at number 2 is honestly like, I do think they dodged a bullet when Dante Moore out of Oregon decided to go back to school. Jets fans may or may not want to hear this, but I think Aaron Glenn is a dead man walking in New York. I don't anticipate things are going to go well for the Jets this year. You look at Glenn, number one, as a defensive coach whose defense stunk in year one, infamously a defensive backgrounded coach whose defense couldn't even get a single interception in his first year. Then you look at the sloppy handlings with the media, the fact that he's already fired effectively his entire staff that he brought in to begin with. I can't remember heading into a year with more confidence that a coach is not going to make it. And to drop a raw 20-year-old quarterback into that world is really scary. So I do think the Jets dodged a bullet in that sense. And it really does allow the Jets to look at this as a true rebuild year. Maybe Aaron Glenn proves me wrong, and I hope he does. But the Jets can sit here and make the best overall pick for the future of their organization. And for me, that's actually a pretty damn easy decision here, and it's Ruben Bain out of Miami. I think positional value included, Ruben Bain is the best football player in this draft class. I knew heading into my film watch on him that I would like him. I didn't know that I would like him as much as I did. There's a lot of noise about the shorter arms, and maybe he's a little bit of a tweener. None of that bothered me when I watched Ruben Bain. Like, yeah, sure, he's got shorter arms, and maybe it reduces his margin for error to the point that pass rush win rate comes down a little bit, and his ceiling is the 8th best edge player in the league, as opposed to a top 5, like perennial defensive player of the year type. Maybe. I'm still not convinced that the arm length does hold him back from being that type of player, but maybe it does. But when you watch this guy week in, week out, and it just doesn't impact his game, and I will say, if you're going to have shorter, stockier arms, you might as well fill them the hell out and have those be freaking hammers for arms and dynamite sticks in your hands and just have that explosive raw power that can come of being, maybe a little bit more of a shorter arm, stocky guy like he is in his upper half. And he weaponizes that super well. Like when he hits you, you go backwards. And to me, that just raises his floor so much. But then you get into all the other stuff that Ruben Bain does. He's got a great first step. His bend is actually really good. And for a guy that people said, oh, maybe he needs to be more of a 4-eye or a 3-tech in the league, I thought Ruben Bain had plenty of speed and explosiveness around the corner. So when you're talking about can a guy be an elite edge rusher at the next level, I think you need to look at two things as a baseline. Do you have an element of power to your game? And can you threaten the tackle's outside shoulder? And that was going to be my main concern, just kind of with what I had heard about Ruben Bain going in. And it just wasn't a concern. In fact, he's really good at threatening the outside corner of tackles with that combination of get off, good enough speed, and natural bend. And then his finesse profile, the bag of moves that he has, his speed to counter, where even if he doesn't win right away, his ability to recognize his leverage and what move he can work to and just have this bag of tricks that he can go through throughout the course of a game to get after the quarterback. It's so impressive. And then he does have some of those, he's not a tweener. I push back on that idea. He's a true edge player. Like, there's no thought for me of converting him to D tackle like some people were saying in the middle of this college football season. But can he rush as a 4-eye or a 3-tech? And you look at this Jets team, and maybe Jermaine Johnson stays on this team and stays healthy. You have a pass rush specialist type of guy in Will McDonald. Yeah, you can move Ruben Bain in as a 4-eye, and that's not a knock. That's a good thing to have that flexibility. Like I said, positional value included. This is the best player in the draft. This is the best pick for the Jets to make here. And maybe Ruben Bain can get Aaron Glenn's defense to start doing some good things here. And I actually happen to think Ruben Bain is a really good scheme fit for Aaron Glenn, who is about as multiple of a coach in terms of varied base fronts on early downs as you're going to get. Before we go to our next pick here, I want to thank the sponsor for today's video, my friends over at SeatGeek. Yes, the NFL season is behind us, but don't let that have you forget that we have so many great sporting events that you can go out and have a good time at a ball game, whether it is the NBA or the NHL. Maybe you're down in the area and you want to go to MLB spring training or get some tickets for opening day, which is coming up here. SeatGeek also has you covered for concerts. I know I was excited to see the notification hit my emails that my man Ed Sheeran is coming to Minneapolis this summer. Looking forward to that. But whatever event you do plan on going to, get your tickets on SeatGeek because they have the best user interface. They color code every seat, so it's easy to know where you're getting the best bang for your buck. Just look for those green dots and you know you're doing so. They have the best app. You get your tickets right there in the app, so you don't have to jump through email chains and have this frustrating process trying to track down your tickets before you get to the gate. And now with code TFG10, you will save up to $20 on top of all of that as well. So SeatGeek has got you, as always, covered for all of your ticketing needs. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's mock draft. And let's get back to the number 3 overall pick with the Arizona Cardinals, which to me were probably the hardest pick for me to make. And it's such a pivotal spot in this draft as well in terms of how the rest of the board is going to fall. You know, I do look at the Cardinals and I perpetually want to improve that offensive line. But just in my, again, preliminary research on these offensive linemen, you could take one at number 3, but there's some issues with all these guys. You're going to have a little bit of a riskier profile for taking a guy at number 3 there. You know, there's likely other better players in the draft than the offensive linemen. So it's that need versus, player grade and value debate. I would love to trade down if you're the Cardinals, but for the same reason this pick is so hard, in that there's not an obvious pick to make, it's equally hard if I'm sitting in the GM chair of all these teams to give up the draft capital it takes to come up to the number 3 pick. So I couldn't find a trade partner here. I had to stick and pick for the Cardinals, and I landed on Arvell Reese for the Cardinals. And Reese is one of the more kind of volatile mysteries of this draft class. I think it's pretty easy to watch him and see the kind of like shades of Micah Parsons that we've said about a lot of prospects in years past. I see a guy with a remarkable first step, hammers for hands, a lot of natural power and pass rushing upside. I do look at Reese as an edge player, by the way. But the thing is, like, he played that just kind of roamer blitz linebacker role for the most part at Ohio State. He got so few true opportunities to rush off the edge. When he did, he was effective, but it was in a very raw way. It was either the bull rush or the speed rush. He's going to have to learn the art of playing edge rusher. I do think as a run defender on earlier downs, he can step in and do that. He is good at shedding blocks. Some of those reps as more of a linebacker, I think, will play for him. Cardinals fans are familiar with that, as Zaven Collins has turned into one of the better run-defending edge rushers in the league. There's a lot of that transfer, similar with an Arvell Reese as it is with Zaven Collins. He's more of a boomer bust player as a pass rusher, but the boom is going to be potentially worth it with this number 3 pick. And you plug him in there with Josh Sweat. Hopefully Walter Nolan can make a healthy recovery from his end of season injury. He looked really good. You have someone that can just cause chaos in Arvell Reese that I think that Nick Rowles coming back as the defensive coordinator is going to know how to move him around and allow him to produce early. You have Zaven Collins and Baron Browning in the mix there as well. But if I can't get an offensive line prospect, and maybe I do watch these guys, and this pick changes by the time we get to our next mock draft, but if there's not like a surefire kind of blue chip offensive line prospect, I'm willing to roll the dice on also a massive position of value in the edge group and get this defense cooking with gas a little bit, because I like the pieces they have in the secondary. If you can really get that D-line to go from, it's been a process where they were really bad, really bad 2 years ago. This last year they were much better, and then get them to be more of a legitimate strength for this team. That can go a long way. I'm a big D-line guy and believe in the impact that can make for your team. So we're going Arvell Reese to play edge for the Arizona Cardinals. Then at number 4, the Tennessee Titans. Another challenging pick, but I did settle on Mekhi Lemon actually here to the Tennessee Titans. And a big part of this is something you'll see as this mock draft goes on. I'm just lower on David Bailey, who's going to be very often brought up here with the Titans at number 4, I think. Obviously, Reuben Bain would be great here too, but he's gone in this scenario. We'll get to David Bailey when I pick him later on. And I also think, again, like offensive line is something you would want here, but you also need wide receivers. And if you think the top wide receiver in this draft class is just a much overall better prospect than the offensive line guys, then take the wide receiver. So we'll see how that plays out for me when I do fully dive into these linemen. But man, Mekhi Lemon plugging into this Titans offense, it gives you such an opportunity for Cam Ward to really thrive in year 2 with Brian Daboll. Not just like, check a box and be like, okay, you have your franchise quarterback, but things still were pretty rocky. Like, you put Mekhi Lemon into this situation, he's the kind of wide receiver that just lifts the entire floor of your passing game. A quarterback's best friend who's going to get open early, produce after the catch, make tough trust catches on 3rd and 8 when you need him to go, into traffic over the middle of the field, or win on a corner route, or, work with you in scramble drill, which Mekhi Lemon is really good at. Cam Ward, getting that trust guy. You have Calvin Ridley. We'll see what he can do next year in hopefully a bounce back year. I like a lot of the rookie pieces they found to kind of plug in as ancillary wide receivers. And I think a lot of people are going to be like, but is Mekhi Lemon just a slot wide receiver? Well, like I said in my wide receiver rankings video, when I've had Mekhi Lemon number 1, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Amon-Ra St. Brown, these guys had the same criticisms coming out. How's that working for them? And I think especially inside the confines of this Titans offense, man, like, all the other wide receivers are more outside pieces. Ioman or DK. Yeah, Ridley can go in the slot, but he's better on the perimeter as that Z. This gives you the engine of your passing game, really, from a target volume perspective in Mekhi Lemon. So that's the pick here at number 4. But then we have the New York Giants at number 5, and this is where I'm going to break the drought of offensive linemen. I think the Giants have finally edged towards their offensive line being pretty solid, but I want to keep building that foundation. We know that with Harbaugh coming in, that's going to be a big focus, as it is with the Harbaugh family. They want to be able to pound the rock, and I think the Giants are getting there. I really do, but let's drop Francis Mauigoa into this thing and go from a solid to good offensive line to potentially great offensive line. We will see what they do with Jermaine Illuminor, who's a pending free agent. If he leaves, this reminds me kind of like the Jets last year, where they let Morgan Moses go, the veteran right tackle, and then just took, we all kind of knew they were going to take a tackle at the 6th pick or wherever they sat. They could create that scenario for themselves. But Mauigoa, by my research to this point, could be a right tackle. Struggles with the foot speed and maybe is more of a guard at the next level, but I actually don't hate that for the Giants. I'm not really afraid of the idea of taking a guy that could be an okay tackle, but maybe is going to be an elite guard. If you do bring Illuminor back, you're really solidifying things, man, because your guards right now are kind of at this point in time like Band-Aid veterans with guys like Greg Van Roten and John Runyon. So whether Maui Goa is a guard or a tackle in year one, that's to be determined. But I do love the idea of beefing that thing up, really making that one of your core strengths. You get Scatabo back. You've got hopefully Malik Neighbors coming back. Hopefully re-sign Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, maybe a wide receiver later down the board. You can really look at this as like a key core infrastructure for Jackson Dart. So we're going to start the first offensive lineman pick there, and then we got another one at number 6 with the Cleveland Browns, who have really backed themselves into a corner here where with at least one of their first-round picks, they have to go offensive lineman. It's become a kind of a viral post at this point that all 5 starters for the Browns are set for free agency. And it is. It's time to reinvest into this offensive line with Todd Monken, your new offensive-minded head coach, coming in. The pick here is going to be Spencer Fano out of Utah. We'll see if he's going to play right tackle or left tackle here for you. But the beauty is they need both anyway. So that takes care of itself. Excited to get into Fano's tape, but it does sound like there's a lot to like that he projects as a franchise tackle. There's just maybe some inconsistencies to clean up, and hopefully the Browns can get to work with him on that. Then at number 7, the Washington Commanders. This is where I'm going to take Caleb Downs, who a lot of people think is the best player in this draft, and I don't think it's crazy. Right now I have the same grade on Downs and Reuben Bain, and then Jeremiah Love with a higher grade above that, but of course the running back positional value playing into that. Not that safety is a crazy position of value either, but I do look at Caleb Downs in this defense as a massive, massive floor raiser in a safety room that's honestly a little hard to look at right now. Will Harris, Jeremy Reeves, like Quan Martin was tough this year and not in a good way. This not just like immediately gives you a starting caliber safety, one of the highest floor overall players in the draft. But the way I describe Caleb Downs is with how good he is at taking away all of those throws that the modern offenses are really putting a priority on right now. You know, digs, crossing routes, in breakers, attacking the middle of the field is viewed as the money area of the defense to attack. Caleb Downs is better than any safety prospect I've ever watched at having that proper eye balance from the back end to actually jump those routes and take them away, whether it's from free safety or, you know, split safety quarters, cover 2, whatever it is. And he's able to kind of take those risks with an elite understanding of route progression. He kind of, you know, can quickly scan the rest of the field and make sure there's no flanking threats if he is going to jump something underneath. So he won't do it when he shouldn't, but he's so consistent at doing it when you want him to, and it just completely changes the math and the makeup of your entire secondary. And what I said about that is like that trait, that proper eye balance and the ability to take those throws away, it's harder to coach than I think most secondary coaches care to admit. And you can just drop that right into your secondary. Not to mention he fills the run. He can play from the slot. He can blitz. He can do everything you ask him to do. Can play single high free safety as well. You know, he's not the freakiest overall player. He's not the biggest safety. He's going to test pretty well, but you know, for a quote unquote smaller safety, I don't think he's going to be like off the charts athleticism, but I think you watch that Commanders defense and how open the middle of the field felt and how slow they felt in the second and third levels. Hard to find a player in this draft that's going to improve that better than Caleb Downs. So I really like that fit. Then we have with the number 8 pick for the New Orleans Saints, a board that fell pretty well for them, right? Like I know Jeremiah Love is in consideration for a lot of Saints fans. I'd be fine with that. Here at number 8, I will just say that. It's not the direction I'm going here. I think wide receivers could be in play. For me, Chris Olave showed that you've got your true number 1. I think this is a really deep draft class. You can continue to look further down the board to help add to that wide receiver room. I love the way Devon Vele played last year as well. You have Jawan Johnson, so they're not like deprived of pass catchers. You could go D-line, but hey, Chase Young played really well last year. Carl Granderson, I think, is still better than any of the edge rushers they would take here. What I'm going to do is kind of continue to build off of their philosophy from last year and get this offensive line right, man. And we're going to take Olave Vega Ione out of Penn State. Another guy I'm really excited to dive into the film, but it seems like everybody that does really likes this guy and sees him as just a tremendously high floor guard, an absolute smasher. You can drop him either, pick your poison, man. You can drop him on the right side next to Talize Fuanga. You can put him on the left by Kelvin Banks, who was really good in the run game last year. But yeah, I mean, the Saints' biggest need is guard. Cesar Ruiz is probably going to be kind of phased out here at some point, but Dylan Radune's kind of a Band-Aid at left guard right now. Even as you slide into center, like I love Eric McCoy, but the guy just can't stay healthy. So I think, just kind of elevating whoever's next up to be kind of the center that would slide in or whatever, like just more depth on the interior line, always valuable as well. But I love this pick for the Saints. I think it just helps build that foundation for Tyler Shuck, and you're going to have other opportunities to add pass catchers and keep building up this defense later on. Offensive line, maybe not so much going to get those opportunities further down the board. But at number 9 for the Kansas City Chiefs, how weird to say that, right? But they get an opportunity to do something that is really hard to do where they normally pick down into the 20s, and that is get a new face on that D-line to be an impact presence. Look, a lot of people have said Jeremiah Love here. What they could do in that run game could be special. I still think like the Chiefs with that interior line, with Eric Bieniemy coming in, I think they have an opportunity to improve at running back, whether it's in free agency or later in the draft. Where they might not get that opportunity is on the defensive line. So if I like a guy on the D-line, that's the position group I'd still prefer to go to for the Chiefs here. Now, this is where I don't think Chiefs fans are going to be happy with me with this one, but it is my honest opinion of who I would pick here for the Chiefs. It is 25-year-old edge rusher Akeem Mesidor out of Miami. As we sit here today, Akeem Mesidor is the second best defensive lineman in this draft. Maybe Arvell Reese or David Bailey or Caleb Banks or Peter Woods someday become better players than Akeem Mesidor. But right now, no, it's not even close. And you could actually make a case Mesidor maybe is even better than Ruben Bain. I'm not going to go quite that far, but the fact that it was even close is a testament to how fun it was to watch this Miami defensive line. The main thing with Mesidor is he turns 25 like before the draft in a few weeks, I think. And a lot of fans just hate that idea. And honestly, for a lot of fan bases, I would get that. Like if you're the Jets or the Dolphins or any number of teams that are like looking at a prolonged rebuild, I get it why you wouldn't want to take a 25-year-old edge rusher. But if you're the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes turning 31 years old here and you're trying to maximize the rest of his physical prime, I mean, who cares what Akeem Mesidor looks like 5 years from now and what that contract situation looks like if he's turning 30 years old? I mean, let's drop a guy into this defensive line that will do everything for you. Seriously, he can rush with power, finesse. He's a really great athlete. He plays the run. He drops into coverage. There's nothing you can't ask Akeem Mesidor to do. I think he's immediately a more disruptive, explosive player than George Karlaftis, who I do like. And look, Chris Jones is 32 years old and has started to show those signs of regression. They got to get ahead of this thing, man. Otherwise, they're going to be back picking in the 20s and looking at the Felix Senaduke Uzamas of the world again. I'm just so much less worried about the age with Mesidor when he's at least utilized that age to develop into a pro-ready pass rusher. You will see a lot of highly drafted guys that come into the league younger that by the time they get to 25 years old, they're not as polished as Akeem Mesidor is today. What Jason Taylor has done with Ruben Bain and Mesidor, I'd be offering that guy a lot of money to come in and coach my NFL defensive line. I'm surprised we didn't see that. But look, I'm a huge fan of Mesidor's game. I compared him to Whitney Merciless, who was for a long time for the Texans, someone that got kind of overshadowed by J.J. Watt, but kind of in the same way that, ironically, like Danielle Hunter's looked at today to Will Anderson. It's like, well, that guy'd probably be the number one on a lot of teams. He just happens to be that team's number two. Whitney Merciless was a baller for a long time. They're about the same size. I see a very similar profile here and just a plug-and-play impact for a team that has added value from getting an edge rusher on a rookie contract that's going to come in and be a really high-level impact for them for the next 5 years. Like, this just makes a lot of sense to me. So we're going Mesidor to the Chiefs at number 9. And then at number 10 for the Cincinnati Bengals, this is where I am going to have David Bailey come off the board so we can have the David Bailey conversation. So Bailey is actually my number 4 edge rusher in this draft behind the 3 guys that we've drafted already. I like him. I just think he's become overrated in this draft class as people are looking for who should slot in as a top 3 or 4 pick in this draft, because it is hard in the confines of this draft. But look, I see the first step. I see the speed. I think he has good power, not great power. But he does not have a diverse pass rushing tool belt, honestly. He out-athleted a bunch of really bad tackles on tape. He runs around the corner, oftentimes against QBs that are dropping a lot further back than they should in the pocket. I actually don't think David Bailey has very good natural bend. He's kind of, like, while he's fast and explosive, he's really light in his lower half, and he's not nearly as bendy as I want him to be when he's mostly just a speed rusher. So I don't love that. I want to see inside counters from him like 4 times more often. It's very rare you see him use the threat of that speed to the corner and actually win with inside swipes or a spin move to the inside. The spin move's in there, but I want to see him set moves up and understand that pass rushing plan so much better. And then I also, like I said, like he's got a very light lower half. He cannot anchor against the run. I don't know that that's ever going to improve with him. He has effort and some strength in his upper body to like shed blocks, and you know he can split into the backfield and like make some splash plays as a run defender, but you're not going to really trust him on early downs early in his career. So I just have some more knocks on this player. What I do think he can do, despite I dinged him on some of the pass rushing stuff, like I do think he's going to be able to impact the quarterback on pass rushing downs. Like, that first step is real. It's an extremely valuable asset he has. And like I said, he's got some power and hopefully he can continue to develop. So this isn't like a Shamar Stewart situation where I wasn't even sure if he was going to be able to like truly impact the quarterback in year 1, or Miles Murphy. Like, no, like I think his skill set will play to an extent. It's just, is he going to develop the technique at the position to become more of a great to elite pass rusher? That's much more to be determined. But I do know that the Bengals need some help on this defense, man. And with Caleb Downs gone, I don't really think it's a defensive back at this spot. Maybe I fall in love with Mansour Delane or Jermad McCoy once we really get into it. They drafted a couple linebackers last year. I don't think Sonny Styles makes the impact that a David Bailey could make for this team. So that's the path I'm going with here. That edge room, depending on what they do with Trey Hendrickson, is it's a rotation of interesting names, but I definitely think Bailey, despite me being lower on him, to get him at number 10 is still a really good pick. And the last thing is I think Bengals fans will say, well, we'll pick interior D-line. Peter Woods, and it's just a little bit early for me to go Peter Woods or Caleb Banks, even though, I like those players for what they are, and we'll talk about them down the board here in a little bit. But at the number 11 pick here, this is, I'm planting my flag, man. I'm sticking with my rankings, trusting my eyes and going against consensus with this pick, but I'm taking Omar Cooper Jr. to the Miami Dolphins with pick 11, pairing him with Jalen Waddle there. I love how those two skill sets play off of each other. You have that true speed threat, but maybe not the most reliable guy. Not the best run after catch threat, Jalen Waddle, in a do-it-all sense. Like, obviously he can catch the ball and run away from the defense, but if you want a guy now in a Shanahan-style offense to Catch the ball on crossing routes, bubble screens, find easy manufactured touches for a guy, someone that can break tackles and navigate his way through traffic, be that tough run after catch threat. Cooper Jr. can do that, but he's a super underrated route runner, especially in the short to intermediate game where he's going to be able to get open, be a reliable target for whatever quarterback lands here at some point in time. He's got impressive ball skills as well, very underrated in that sense. Reliable hands when it comes to drops. He'll run block for you as well, so you can flex him in closer to the line of scrimmage. They're going to be going with that kind of Shanahan-McVay style offense here, and they just don't have like Waddle is great for what he's able to do, but he can't do all the stuff that Omar Cooper Jr. can do for you. And I just love that fit inside this offense. He's going to land as the best player available outside of Jeremiah Love. But obviously, you've got Devon Achane there. You don't need to take Jeremiah Love. So there's the pick for the Dolphins. We got some pretty fun playmakers down there in Miami now. And then with the Dallas Cowboys at number 12, this is a player I was tweeting a lot about, saying that I can't match the top 5 hype that this guy's starting to get. But it's still a player I like in Sonny Styles out of Ohio State. I think this is where I kind of start to get comfortable with Sonny Styles within this draft class. Look, love the length, love the athleticism, former safety. I see a lot of high-end plays from him in coverage, but there's just a lot of issues with his game that he still needs to develop. I don't think he's a good run defender, man. I think his diagnostics are slow. I think the way he goes about taking on blocks, you just need to rework his overall technique there. He kind of throws himself into blocks when he doesn't need to. He misses on opportunities to actually make plays. That shows up as a blitzer too, where it's like he will explode into the gap and then take on the running back, and he just like launches his shoulder and lowers his head into the running back, and it's like, dude, you're such a good athlete. Like, let's see you actually get around the running back and finish the play instead of just letting the running back take you out of the play. And that same kind of philosophy definitely shows up in the run game when you go play to play with him. So just like a lot of these younger linebackers, a lot of these guys are converted safeties, like it's just going to be a process in terms of learning the run game and being a consistent impact there. But you do see the natural play strength, the ability to get off blocks, like some really high-end plays when things do click and he takes on blocks with the right technique. You're like, that's what we're trying to get out of you every play. So if they can get that, Sonny Styles could be one of the best linebackers in the league. But how many first-round linebackers have we said that about? Tremaine Edmonds, Isaiah Simmons, Quay Walker was supposed to be that idea for the Packers. Jamin Davis, Kenneth Murray has found himself here in Dallas here. It's a position that has a very high first round bust rate. It typically has, there's your outliers, right? You're going to have a Carson Schwessinger and a Edgerrin Cooper that are great as rookies. And in a maybe top 20% outcome, you might get that with Sonny Styles, which is part of why you take him here at number 12, but maybe it does take 2 or 3 years for him to really get there. And here at the number 12 pick in this draft class, I can get behind that, but you're talking about a position that's much cheaper on the open market as a top 5 pick with the potential risk profile there. It's just like, I can't quite get there when I'd rather just go out and sign Leo Chanel for like the same price as a top 5 pick and then spend that draft pick on a position of high value. That's kind of the core reason of why I'm lower on Sonny Styles. But again, there were some tape concerns there, but not to say this wouldn't be a really fun pick for Dallas, a team that does need more team speed, especially at the second level of that defense. And their new defensive coordinator coming over from Philly has seen a really impressive run of getting the best out of linebackers. Whether it's Jahad Campbell last year, who was really good. You have Nakobe Dean, you have Zach Bond coming over. Like, if there's some carryover there, you're going to maybe have a better chance at him being an impact early on. Before we go to the next pick, real quick, if you could take just a second to hit that like button, it really does help me out. Pushes this video out to other draft sickos just like you. A little football emote will show up when you do, which is fun. But I really do appreciate it if you're enjoying the video, if you could take just a second to hit that like down below. Then at number 13 for the LA Rams, I'm going with a pick that I think has has mostly become chalk as long as this guy's there. Mansour Delane, the cornerback out of LSU, this is the biggest need for the Rams, and this is about the consensus spot for Delane. Again, preliminary research on him. I haven't dove into the tape quite yet, but it sounds like maybe not the freakiest corner, but someone that is really good in off zone, really high IQ guy that had a really good productive season there for LSU. That sounds like a freaking Rams corner to me, man, because the Rams have been the definition of just draft good football players. We might not have the freakiest team in the world, but I would argue that the Rams have prioritized the tape grade over the physical grade more than any drafting team in the league, and it's led to a lot of success for them. So kind of stick with that strategy. And it's not that, Delane's maybe this horrible athlete, but maybe not the typical athlete of what you would spend on a top 15 pick at corner. But within the system that they run there, it absolutely makes sense. And then at pick 14 for the Baltimore Ravens, they get Carnell Tate here at pick 14, and I would say this is the absolute floor for a Carnell Tate. I really like Tate, but I also like these other wide receivers, so when that's the case, he's going to drop down the board a little bit because only so many teams need to draft wide receivers early. Some teams are looking at this wide receiver class, and it's like, yeah, we really like, Carnell Tate, but can we get Jeremy Bernard, Elijah Surratt, Fields from Notre Dame, or receivers in a bunch of different shapes and sizes? Like, this is a really good wide receiver class, man. So I don't think it's crazy that Carnell Tate could slip about this far. But yeah, if he gets to the Ravens at 14, and they've been looking for a guy like this, man, like they found their Band-Aid version of this in DeAndre Hopkins. But dude, you pair Carnell Tate with Zay Flowers, I can't really picture a better package of skill sets to put together with how those two dudes mesh, with Flowers being more of the speed agility based guy and Tate being that true X on the perimeter. Love that for Lamar. What a fun pick for the Ravens at number 14. Then we have the Bucs at number 15. I went with Peter Woods here out of Clemson. Definitely think this fills a need with Vita Vea getting older. You've got Kalijah Kancey I really like, but he struggles to stay healthy. Logan Hall's a pending free agent, so that interior D-line definitely needs some help. Peter Wood's a fascinating player, right? Like, was a projected top 5 pick heading into the year and just had a down season. A lot of people talking about how he shed a lot of weight and then just didn't have a productive season, man. So that kind of adds some, the way I like to describe it is fog of war to his evaluation in terms of all right, what weight is he going to play at? I did watch Peter Woods at Clemson, and he wasn't comfortable at that weight from a play strength element. You saw him get moved off the ball. I didn't love the power profile from him. You see the ability to uncoil and get into guys quickly, but I do wonder if a team like the Bucs would say, hey, let's get you back up to, maybe in the middle there, about 315, 320 even. That really the idea that kind of gets me excited. At the end of the day, if you have 14 pressures in the final year of your college career on 363 pass rush snaps, I don't care how many excuses you make, that's really bad. So they got to get the best out of this player, but there is a kind of Pro Bowl plus caliber athlete in there to be kind of molded. And it's not like he doesn't have pass rush moves or anything. Like, he understands the position. I do think that he's got to keep his pads down at times in the run game, but there's a lot to work with, but a lot of production questions and weight. Where is he going to play? The play strength really wasn't that great last year at Clemson. I do think it impacted him. So not a perfect prospect, but definitely an exciting high upside pick at pick 15 for the Bucs. Next up, the Jets at pick number 16. I actually thought about Jeremiah Love here and stopping his kind of slide, because I think that's the big name. People are like, when's Love coming off the board? It's just tough. Not everybody needs a running back or needs to draft one this high, but definitely if they do let Breece Hall go, I think taking Jeremiah Love at 16 would be an easy pick. So I wanted to shout that out. I don't know what's going to happen with Breece Hall, but I'm going to go Jermond McCoy, cornerback out of Tennessee. Kind of ironic that one of the picks they got from the Colts for Sauce Gardner is going back to that cornerback room, but sometimes things just play out that way. And it's not like Jermod McCoy needs to be Sauce Gardner, right? You got another first-round pick. You got Adonai Mitchell. You got all the added cap space that moving on from Sauce cleared up for you. So it's not just an eye for an eye there, but it is kind of funny to think about. But yeah, McCoy he was a freak his sophomore season that just couldn't play in his junior season. So kind of another guy, just like Peter Woods, where there's a lot of fog of war there. Was he going to be suspect to a down year? Do you care, considering his sophomore season was so good? He kind of reminds me a little bit of like what we said about Derek Stingley, where it's like, man, that freshman year was so freaking good against SEC competition that 2 years of not really doing much after that, we kind of just dismissed it. And we're like, yeah, well, you'll be able to get the old Derek Stingley back. You're kind of betting on that with Jermod McCoy a little bit, but the tape I have seen on him from his sophomore season, because he's obviously been kind of on the spotlight for a while now, it's pretty special. Excited to come to a final grade on him, but I think getting him at 16 is more than fair for the Jets, and they need cornerbacks, man. They really do. In their damn foreseeable future. I mean, Brandon Stevens, credit where credit's due, played well last year, but he turns 29 this year. That's a dangerous falling off point for a lot of cornerbacks. You know, we just don't know what Azariah Thomas is going to be after a very up and down rookie season. You know, Jarvis Brownlee's a fun kind of nickel for you, but definitely fills a position of need and is a value at 16 here. Then we have the Detroit Lions at number 17. This option just stands out to me for Detroit. Caden Proctor, offensive lineman out of Alabama. Another one of these kind of like mauling, quote-unquote, oversized Alabama tackles that is going to be able to move you in the run game, is going to anchor as a pass blocker. A lot of these guys like Caden Proctor like can actually like get back and protect the corner, but does he have the foot speed to play tackle? TBD, right? I definitely didn't think J.C. Latham did, and he's been okay as a tackle for the Titans. So maybe the long-term plan is to kick Caden Proctor out to left tackle as Taylor Decker is getting older and older and older, and struggling to stay healthy year in, year out. But we're playing Caden Proctor at guard and just moving people. I think we're probably going to move forward with the Tate Ratledge at center strategy that they had kind of began the works of that in the preseason last year. And we also just don't know exactly what Christian Mahogany is at this point because of how bad he was as a pass blocker last year. So you've got some flexibility there. Like it's not a simple cookie cutter solution in terms of like who's playing where or what, but I feel pretty damn strong that the Lions need another piece in that offensive line, and Caden Proctor allows some of that flexibility, and he definitely is their type to just smash and bite kneecaps, right? So we're going that route with really not a lot of better options staring me in the face there for Detroit at 17. But then the Minnesota Vikings at 18, this is the dream scenario, is that Jeremiah Love lands in your lap. This is like for a placeholder GM, they're gonna go and hire a new GM after the fact. This is like the easiest decision you could make as a guy that like you just don't want to F this up. Getting Love at 18, like this is his absolute floor. Again, it's harder when you look at the teams like 10 through 17, and they all are kind of set at running back. Like, okay, maybe the Ravens like want to get ready to replace Derrick Henry, but why do that when you can grab a Carnell Tate instead? Jets, again, we'll see what they do with Breece Hall, but if the Saints and Chiefs go in a different direction, we could absolutely see a fall for Jeremy Love, and I think the Vikings would stop that fall at 18 because Aaron Jones, I think, probably going to get cut. Jordan Mason, nice player, but is what he is. The Vikings have not had a good run game since Dalvin Cook left, and honestly, Dalvin Cook is one of the better pro comps I think you can make on Jeremiah Love. So a pretty self-explanatory, fun pick there for Minnesota. I think Vikings fans are like, can this please happen? But before we go to the Panthers at 19, just a couple of shameless plugs here. I want to remind you guys, I do have a merchandise store, so if you like the draft season hoodie, if you want to support the channel and get some merch, that link is in the description below. I also want to say something I don't say enough. I do have a Discord. That link is in the description down below if you want to hop in the Discord and get involved in some of the chats with the TFG community there as well. And then also I have a TikTok. If you did not know that, it is That Franchise Guy on TikTok. My beautiful, talented wife is actually putting together some shorts from some of my content and helping me get some more short form content that you maybe have seen on the YouTube shorts as well. So just some quick plugs there, and let's get to those Panthers at number 19. I'm going to go with Emmanuel McNeil-Warren to the Carolina Panthers here. Now, I've seen some cut-ups on him. I've heard some well-respected minds, guys like Daniel Jeremiah, break this guy down. Sounds like he's going to be one of these high-rising, smaller school guys who's going to test really well. He's 6'2", he's over 200 pounds, flies around, good in coverage, like kind of a checks all boxes type of safety prospect. Really excited to get to his tape again, which I have not done yet, but pairing him with Trayvon Merrick in that secondary, where I like their outside cornerback duo, Chow Smith-Wade, Corey Thornton filling in the nickel a little bit there. All of a sudden, you're looking at that Panthers secondary. After a year ago, you're like, it's J.C. Horn and nobody else. Well, things have really rounded out, and even if we're not hitting the D-line here, as a lot of D-linemen have come off the board, that would be my preference for the Panthers, but the only other guy I really like is Caleb Banks, and I just don't know that you have to go that route because you have interior players. It's more of that edge group I want to upgrade for Carolina. So if Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is kind of a best player available type of pick here, again, we'll see what that grade ends up being finalized for me there, but I do really like the way that he rounds out that secondary. And look, I will finish by saying this too. I think a lot of Panthers fans like Lathan Ransom. He's a big hitter. Ohio State, fourth-round pick last year. I just don't trust Lathan Ransom as a full-time starter. I like him in a dime role where he can kind of run around and do what he does well. If we got to roll forward with him as a starter, it's like, okay, we can do that. You also have Nick Scott, was kind of even ahead of him on the depth chart last year. I definitely think you can upgrade there. Hence why McNeil-Warren is the pick there. Then the Cowboys up at pick number 20. Another kind of high-rising name here, Monroe Feeling, the tackle out of Georgia. Seems to be a lot of shades of Colton Miller when he came out, who's turned into a very good franchise tackle for the Raiders, but was the 15th pick in that draft, someone that was tall and athletic, but maybe needed to fill out a little bit more, get a little stronger, more consistent in his overall technique. Had some struggles early, but really came along. I look at the Cowboys tackle room, and there were a lot of games, honestly, with the Cowboys where I watched them and I was like, man, if they just had tackles that could pass protect, they'd be boat racing teams. And I think you got to invest in that group, man. Terrence Steele, to me, loved the run blocking, but man, he is an issue as a pass protector. And Tyler Guyton, 2 years into this thing, I have no confidence that he's going to be a franchise tackle for you. So you have two question marks at tackle, two guys that are maybe going to start day one with the Monroe Feeling pick. But I don't think it's going to be long until you get to the point where Monroe Feeling is a massive upgrade for you. So we're going with that, with the first Micah Parsons pick that they picked up from Green Bay. And then we get the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 21. There's still a big name out there, and he's coming off the board here for the Steelers at number 21. It is a tie. Not Ty Simpson, though, the quarterback that some might be thinking about for the Steelers here. It's Ty's son, Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver out of Arizona State. Off the bat, like, what a fun fit for the Steelers. I think the perfect fit for DK Metcalf with his kind of unique skill set. You get a Jordan Tyson who's a fluid route runner, fluid after the catch. Can do everything at the wide receiver position at his best. Reminds me a lot of like Stephon Diggs. You pair that with DK Metcalf in a wide receiver room that really just doesn't have anybody else. Whoever it is at quarterback for the Steelers, whether it's Rodgers for another year or Malik Willis or whoever it is, you got so much more to work with there. So love the fit in Pittsburgh. Some people might say, oh, Tyson's not going to fall this far. Well, especially if you're as high on an Omar Cooper as I am and willing to kind of take a Cooper over a Jordan Tyson just because I'm not worried about the health stuff. This could certainly happen. But I do think, the saying is if you get hurt in college, you'll get hurt in the pros. And Tyson has missed, about half of his total career in college due to the injuries. ACL early on, then it's the collarbone that keeps him out of the college playoffs. Then this year it's hamstring issues. It's like you can easily see a world where teams are like, we're just going to go in a different direction. Now the Steelers, kind of like we said with the Rams, where they have a certain drafting style, the Steelers historically have been a team that doesn't really put a lot of weight into injury concern guys. And I can definitely see a world where they really like Jordan Tyson. So this is a really good match made in heaven, and maybe in a sense is a bit of a floor in terms of how low Jordan Tyson could maybe go in the real draft. But then at number 22, hallelujah, Los Angeles Chargers. You finally get a defensive tackle that makes sense for you to pick. Last year I really wanted them to go DT, but they all came off the board right before they picked. This time, Caleb Banks kind of slots in right into the right spot. I see Caleb Banks in the 15 to 25 range of this draft being well worth the risk. Now, it is a risk on Caleb Banks. Let me be clear about that. Foot injury essentially rendered his 2025 season moot. Played a couple games, but it was on a foot injury, whether he was rushing out there early or rushing out there late. You still saw some of the explosiveness, some of the exciting flashes on the 2025 tape, but I think you really got to go back to 2024 and see what makes this guy so special. There are shades of Chris Jones in Caleb Banks' game. In terms of that guy that he's 6'5.5", 6'6", kind of plays upright a little bit, like he kind of rushes standing up, and he'll hit you with the swim move, and he goes power to speed where he'll kind of shock you and then run past you. A play style that when you watch a guy like Chris Jones, or I said the same thing about Deion Walker last year as well, who ended up having a really good rookie season for the Bills, where it just, from a technique standpoint, you watch and it's like, that probably shouldn't work, but when you're as athletic at that size as a guy like Caleb Banks is, and you have as good of core strength as he has, and you have good technique to do a push-pull swim or use your hands to keep guys off of you or rip past these guys, it does work. And the other thing with Banks is, for a big guy, he can absolutely uncoil, get into your chest, and drive you backwards. So he's got the power, he's got a combo of different rush moves. He's just this kind of like natural athlete that just gets after the quarterback. He can penetrate in the run game. I do think the pad level comes up against the run, and he is, just like I said with Deion Walker, like he's on paper, you're going to say that's a nose tackle, but you actually watch him and you're like, no, you want him as a 3-tech. You want him one-gapping, shooting gaps, being a penetrator, not like taking on double teams and trying to hold the point of attack. That's not really what you're drafting him to do. But I do think you pair this disruption with Jamari Caldwell, who I think did some really good stuff in his rookie year. That's a freaky tandem that could really turn into something pretty special for the Chargers. So I really like this pick at 22. And then the Philadelphia Eagles at number 23. Kenyon Sadiq makes way too much sense for Philly. Dallas Goedert's a pending free agent. We'll see if they're able to kind of fit him into the cap. Even if they do get Dallas Goedert back on a, maybe 2-year deal, I think Kenyon Sadiq actually can still absolutely play a key role for this team out the gate as a tight end 2 for 12 personnel, which I think this team's going to want to run a lot more of, with Mannion coming over from kind of the LaFleur and Kevin O'Connell offenses that do like a lot of heavy personnel. So I think we see a lot more under center, 12 personnel. So even if Goddard's back, actually maybe even like that better, because I think Kenyon Sadiq is a wing player, is a slot wide receiver, which the Eagles don't really have a true slot guy. I think he absolutely fits in that role, kind of like what Zach Ertz was to Dallas Goedert when they were together for a couple of years there. But if you do let Goedert go, I think Sadiq can be a full inline tight end. He's not the biggest guy, but he's pretty rocked up and he blocks his ass off. There's some stuff to clean up with his technique, but dude, this guy he's one of the better players in the draft. It's just a matter of where does he make the most sense? But such a natural in the receiving game, man. I was pretty blown away by how smooth he was in his routes, how well he set guys up. He's got the speed to stretch the seam. He makes some really impressive catches on tape as well. Good contested catch win rate. A lot of frustrating drops with him, so you got to have him hit the jugs machine and clean up some of that consistency. But I really like Kenyon Sadiq. And this would just be another kind of like Howie Roseman can't keep getting away with it, because I think when I drop my final big board, like independent of positional value, I'm pretty sure Kenyon Sadiq will be inside the top 10 for this year's draft. But sometimes things just play out this way. But then we got the Cleveland Browns back up at pick number 24. And I kind of hinted at it earlier, but I'm actually going to double dip for the Browns on the offensive line. Not only do they actually need 2 starting tackles, and Blake Miller's going to be the pick here out of Clemson, but the double dip strategy is so underrated, because the reality of the draft is not everybody works out. But if you throw 2 darts, your chances of getting a franchise tackle out of this draft are literally doubled. And if both of those darts hit, then you now have a, pair of first round tackles coming into the league together, and you've set yourself up for repairing this offensive line that is so desperately needed. So it's a pretty easy strategy to go with, and I think the board probably falls pretty well for the Browns to set this up. It seems like Maui Goa and Fano at the top of the draft could be in play at number 6 for them, and then you have this kind of range of like Monroe Feeling and Blake Miller, Caleb Lomu, kind of in the 20s range where you could grab that other guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is what we see from the Browns on draft day. They do still need some wide receiver help. They need a quarterback. I think you can find some of that wide receiver help further into the draft. And they do have another pick coming up here in like 10 spots or whatever it is. So maybe that's where you're looking there. But yeah, we're going to grab the second tackle there in Blake Miller out of Clemson. Then at number 25, where we have the Las Vegas Raiders, who got this Bears pick in the Max Crosby trade. The Raiders have so many needs. Really every spot on the defense now that Max Crosby's been traded away, you could literally just filter your defensive draft board and just find the highest graded player and grab him, assuming it's a scheme fit, and you're not going to complain about this pick. But because they have so many needs there, including some depth pieces to maybe fill in on offense, I'm going to continue to recoup picks and build up the core of this team and look for a trade down partner. And I'm not trading that far down. We're going to trade down to the 29th pick. But this is where I'm going to have actually the LA Rams just coming up about 4 spots. So this is not the biggest blockbuster trade or anything like that, but it's going to be a swap of later picks to make this happen. So the Raiders pick up the 93rd pick in the draft. So you get some really good added value and a potential starter there. And then the Raiders are going to send the 174th pick back to the Rams. But we're going to come up with the Rams and grab Ty Simpson here. And you might say, well, what the hell? No one else ahead of the Rams was going to take a quarterback. Why would you trade up and do this? Well, we see it almost every year at this point. A team, whether it would be the Jets or the Cardinals or maybe the Browns, jumping back into the first in this range. So you're being aggressive to come up and get this guy. And dude, Ty Simpson on the Rams, I know it's a common opinion to do this, but it makes a ton of sense. And my takeaway when I watched Ty Simpson was that I kind of like him. Like he moves really well. His arm was way better than I expected, honestly. I don't know why. I just didn't think he would have that strong of an arm, but man, he can drive throws over the middle of the field. He can really send it deep. Like, he's a traitier quarterback than Fernando Mendoza. And the other thing too is he actually ran more of a pro-style offense than Fernando Mendoza. He made a lot more mistakes than Mendoza. I'm not saying he's a better prospect, but I mean, in terms of being asked to get to backside digs, that Sean McVay is absolutely going to want a quarterback that can do that. Like, he did that all the time at Alabama. He almost one thing that frustrates me with Ty Simpson is he almost gets through his reads too quickly, where he gives up on the first read too quickly. You also factor in that he got hurt, and that kind of led to a lack of efficiency down the stretch. I actually think that narrative is a little bit overblown. I didn't see a massive physical drop-off with him when I watched those later season games. I think he's a guy that's only started 13 games, and it just happened to line up where he was on a little bit of a hot stretch early and then started to make some bigger mistakes and miss some throws later on. But you get this guy behind Matthew Stafford in the, literally the Jordan Love kind of development plan. This is exactly what the Packers did, by the way, was they came up from I think it was it exactly this? The 29th pick up to the 24th pick. It was very similar. So a lot of shades of that. I did like Love better than Simpson as a prospect, but I can see it with Ty Simpson. So really like that landing spot. Go make it happen for the Rams. And, they don't have a ton of needs. They can afford to take a third round, drop it into the fifth in order to come up and secure their guy here. But then at pick number 26 with the Buffalo Bills, hold your breath, Bills fans, because we're going to grab another big-bodied, thumping wide receiver here. I know the Keon Coleman experience has been frustrating, but I'm going to take Denzel Boston out of Washington. And look, while their physical profile is pretty similar, where you're looking at kind of a 6'4", 210-plus wide receiver, draft range is pretty damn similar. Their skill set is very different. Boston consistently showed that X-wide receiver skill set where he can go down the field, win tough catches, work back shoulders, win on double moves, and run that X-wide receiver route tree. Coleman was much more different, where he was a lot better in the short to intermediate game, run after catch. And because of that, I actually think there's still a world for Boston and Coleman's skill sets to coincide here if things can continue to work out with Coleman. But, the Bills need a perimeter wide receiver threat. And I think Joe Brady knows that. There's a lot of criticisms of Brady being, the screens on third down and not utilizing outside wide receivers and pushing the ball downfield. Well, even once they got Brandon Cooks into the mix, or when Tyrell Shavers showed some ability to get down the field, they showed that they want to push the ball downfield. They just haven't had the right guy to do that with. So I think that can be Denzel Boston. My pro comp on him is Mike Williams. I don't think he's ever going to be a massive superstar in the NFL, but I do think he's the right pick for the Bills here at 26 and is very much the missing piece for this offense. And then we can worry about Jim Leonard and that defense kind of shaping into form with later picks. All right, next up, we have the 49ers at pick number 27, going to grab Dylan Thieneman, safety out of Oregon. I think that second safety spot was a pretty massive issue for this 49ers defense. And even Malik Mustafa is inconsistent. I still believe in Mustafa, but the combination of Jair Brown and, Marquise Siegel, God bless his heart, I think he's probably got to go back into the slot. He just wasn't really a fit as a safety for them. Jason Pinnock, let's get a real first-round safety prospect here. Another guy that, again, I need to get into the tape, but I've seen some stuff on him. Someone that, definitely feels like a 49er in terms of a bigger-bodied guy that will fill the run, good coverage instincts, should test pretty well. It's kind of a hot, rising name, this safety class generating a lot of buzz. He seems to absolutely fit the mold of a 49ers safety. So that's the pick at number 27. And then the Houston Texans up at number 28. I do still think, you want to keep your eyes open on the offensive line. I think at right tackle, at guard, at center. If you think any of these guys are of value, I think that's perfectly reasonable to go that route. But you do have another pick coming up from the Commanders that turn into a high second-round pick from Laramie Tunsil. So maybe that's the spot. We add another piece to this offensive line. I think you can fill another need and make this defense even better by grabbing Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech. I haven't finalized my eval on Lee Hunter. It was more of I was keeping an eye on him while I watched David Bailey, but seems like a very balanced kind of late first round D tackle prospect where he's maybe not elite in any category, but moves well, plays the run with a lot of urgency, I think, open up a lot of opportunities to help the Texans get the Texas Tech get to third downs, which is obviously something you want to do if you're the Texans as well. So I think the run defense element, getting a little bit of size and physicality in there, and then someone that can get after the quarterback as well. I mean, Sheldon Rankins was a huge impact for the Texans last year. You can't count on that every year, just getting older, and someone that this has been Sheldon Rankins' career, right? 1 year he's great, the next year he can't stay healthy. So getting some added depth into that room. You know, Danico Autry feels like he's about 73 years old in football years at this point. So I think this absolutely fills a need. And again, we can still look at the offensive line here in just a little bit. Then we have the Raiders up at 29. And like I said, you can basically just sort your defensive board and just pick off the top and slot them right in, because this team needs, at this point, 4 starting defensive linemen. They need 2 starting linebackers. They need, I would say, 3 starting cornerbacks. I still like Darian Porter. I hope, he should get a chance to start this year. And they need 2 safeties. Like, I'm not even kidding, man. This defense is an absolute joke. It's a big reason why you make the Max Crosby trade, to turn that into more players. After the trade down here, we've now turned Max Crosby into DJ Moore and 3 potential starters with draft picks there. But Avion Terrell is going to be the guy I'm going with here. Sorry to beat a dead horse, but don't have a final grade on Avion Terrell, but seems like a very athletic, very scrappy corner with ball skills that's just a little bit undersized. Like, you don't know if he's going to be a slot or an outside guy or necessarily where that plays out. But again, if you're the Raiders, it doesn't freaking matter. If he's a slot, great. We need a starting slot. If he's an outside corner, great. We need an outside corner. So we're going to get Avion Terrell in here into the first round to the Raiders, filling a massive need at cornerback. Then at number 30 for the Denver Broncos, C.J. Allen out of Georgia, another guy that I have watched some of, don't have a final grade on, but really do like what I see there. Seems like a very balanced kind of do-it-all Georgia linebacker. Really caught my attention in that conference championship game against Alabama. But if you're the Broncos here, I mean, Dre Greenlaw was able to get back out there and play at a good level, but he's getting up there in age with a long list of injuries on his career at this point. Alex Singleton had a very up and down season on and off the field. Maybe Drew Sanders can finally stay healthy and do something for you, but we're 3 years into this thing. He's played 280 snaps for this team, so that ship has probably sailed. Broncos don't have a ton of needs. You could certainly look at some wide receiver options here, but I think addressing that linebacker room is a good choice here and a very good prospect in C.J. Allen. Again, it's a very deep wide receiver class. You're going to have opportunities to fill that playmaker role later on. And then at number 31, the New England Patriots, I'm going to take Caleb Lomu. Really like this landing spot for New England because they are going to need some tackle help down the road, especially at right tackle where, look, Morgan Moses somehow was able to stay healthy and play at a high level at 34 years old. Can he do it again at 35 when he has consistently over the course of his career missed time? That's a tough sell, and even then, he's not going to be here forever. And then even at left tackle, there's a lot of noise about, Will Campbell. Does he need to slide in a guard? I'm not on that train, by the way. I actually still believe that Campbell's skill set is best at tackle. That's a conversation to have for another day. But if they do slide him into guard, you're going to need a left tackle too. So with Lomu, he needs to add weight. He needs to be more consistent, but there's a lot to like in terms of the way he moves and the way he can use his hands. So get him in that development cycle. He doesn't need to start right away. A lot of fans want that day one starter in the first round, but this is what the good teams do. They plan ahead with their line, especially, and set plans in place so that you don't end up in points of desperation at those big positions of need like tackle. And then at number 32, your defending Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. Definitely looking at that cornerback room. And this is almost a placeholder name as someone that I'm just honestly not that familiar with, but I have seen him in like top 20 big boards. I think Daniel Jeremiah has him like 17th on his top 50 big board. So it could be a guy I end up a lot higher on than this at 32. Could be someone I end up lower on than here at 32. But does seem to fit the mold, at least based on my preliminary research, where he's not necessarily the biggest guy, but he is very physical, very smart, and had a very good year at Tennessee in a system that is loosely familiar to the off-zone principles that Mike McDonald wants to run, and someone that can get in your face and run press as well, according to Daniel Jeremiah. So Colton Hood is the final pick of this first round to the Seahawks at 32. That's going to do it for Mock Draft 1.0. Really hope you enjoyed. Please do hit that like button if you did. Make sure you subscribe for all of my draft content. Let me know in the comments below what you think of today's mock draft. That's all I've got. Thank you for watching. Cheers, and I'll see you later.